Arya pressed her back against the bark of an oak, her chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. She shouldn't have been here. She shouldn't have followed him. And yet, her heart had always been reckless where he was concerned. Lucian Blackthorn, the Alpha King. Every wolf in the realm feared his name, his power, his merciless command. But standing close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin, Arya could only feel one thing: drawn in a way that terrified her more than his title ever could. His golden eyes glowed in the moonlight, fierce and wild. "You shouldn't look at me like that," he rasped, voice low and dangerous, like gravel caught in velvet. "And how am I looking at you?" Arya whispered, her lips trembling, though she tried to mask it with defiance. "Like you want me." His words struck the air between them like fire. Arya's heart pounded, torn between running and surrendering. But when his hand reached for hers, large, calloused and trembling with restraint, her decision was made for her. The mate bond burned hot, undeniable. That night she gave in. That night everything changed. By morning she was gone. And weeks later, when the sickness came, when her hand pressed against her flat stomach and realization dawned with both terror and awe, she swore one thing: he would never know. 6 years later. The bell above the small flower shop chimed as the door swung open, letting in a rush of warm summer air. Arya brushed her hands against her apron, her fingers dusted with pollen, and looked up with a practiced smile. "Good morning," she began, but her voice softened when she saw who it was. A little boy with tousled dark hair and golden-flecked eyes stood in the doorway, his arms filled with a clumsy bundle of wildflowers he'd clearly picked himself. His grin was wide, a little lopsided, and her heart clenched just looking at him. "Mom!" Ethan called, rushing inside, his small sneakers squeaking on the wooden floor. "I got these for you. They're not as pretty as your flowers, but I thought maybe you'd like them." Arya knelt, her throat tightening as he thrust the flowers toward her. They were uneven, some stems broken, but to her, they were perfect. She cupped his cheek gently, kissing his forehead. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Just like you." Ethan giggled, the sound so full of light it banished the shadows that sometimes lingered in her chest. No matter the sleepless nights, no matter the fear of being discovered, he was worth it. Every risk, every lie, every quiet prayer that the Alpha King would never find them. Her little boy, with his glowing eyes and wolf spirit, was a secret she would guard with her life. Arya tucked the flowers into a vase, arranging them with care, while Ethan wandered to the shop window, his small fingers pressing against the glass. "Mama," he said suddenly, his tone curious, "who's that man outside?" Arya stiffened. Slowly she turned, and froze. A tall figure stood across the street, dressed in dark clothes that fit his broad frame like a second skin. His presence alone seemed to command the air, bending it around him. His eyes, sharp, golden, too familiar, swept the town with a predator's ease. For 6 years she had dreamed of this moment and dreaded it all the same. Lucian Blackthorn, the Alpha King. Her son's father. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She grabbed Ethan, pulling him away from the window with a trembling smile. "Stay close to me, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking on the word. But fate had already decided. The Alpha King had found her. The bell above the shop door chimed again. Arya's heart stuttered. She had prayed it wasn't him, that perhaps her fear was making shadows look like ghosts. But the moment his tall frame filled the doorway, she knew there was no mistake. Lucian Blackthorn had walked into her little flower shop, the Alpha King. He looked out of place in her simple world, too commanding, too dark, too dangerous. Dressed in black, his coat undone to reveal the hard lines of his chest beneath, his presence consumed the small shop, making it feel suddenly too small, too fragile. His golden eyes swept the room once, sharp and calculating, and when they landed on her, the air seemed to still. For a moment, Arya forgot how to breathe. 6 years had passed, yet time had done nothing to dull him. He was broader now, more powerful, and there was something heavier in his gaze, a shadow that hadn't been there before. "Flowers?" Lucian said at last, his deep voice filling the space. "I need flowers." It was such an ordinary request, yet the way he said it made her pulse race. She smoothed her apron, forcing her hands not to shake. What kind?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Lucian tilted his head slightly, his gaze flicking over her face as though trying to peel back layers of memory. His eyes narrowed. Something strong. A faint pause. Something that lasts. Arya swallowed hard, reaching for a bouquet of white lilies, praying he would take them and leave. But fate was cruel. "Mama!" Ethan's voice rang out like a bell. He came barreling from the back room, holding a crayon drawing of a wolf in his small hands. "Look what I—" He stopped, his bright golden eyes widening as they landed on the stranger. Lucian's body went rigid. The world seemed to tilt. Those eyes, that scent, that bond. His wolf surged forward inside him with a possessive growl that only he could hear. Arya's breath caught, panic clawing through her chest as she rushed to Ethan's side, placing herself between him and Lucian like a shield. Her trembling hand found her son's shoulder, gripping tightly. Lucian's gaze locked onto the boy, and his voice dropped low, dangerous. "Who is he?" Arya's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her pulse was so loud she thought he could hear it. "This is my son," she whispered finally, the lie catching on her tongue. "Mine." Lucian's jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring as if he could smell the truth in the air. His golden eyes burned, and for the first time in years his mask slipped. "Your son?" he repeated, each word like a blade. His gaze shifted back to Ethan, who stared up at him with innocent curiosity, those same golden flecks swirling in his irises, a mirror of the man who stood before him. Lucian's hand clenched at his side. His voice was a growl when he spoke again. "No, he's mine." The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. The scent of roses and lilacs in the shop no longer smelled sweet. It was suffocating, cloying, wrapping itself around Arya's throat. Lucian's golden eyes didn't waver from the little boy who stood half hidden behind her leg. Ethan tilted his head, his voice curious and guileless. "Mama, who is he? Why is he looking at me like that?" Arya forced a smile down at him, though her heart hammered like a drum. "He's just a customer, sweetheart. Go finish your drawing in the back, okay?" Ethan hesitated, his eyes darting once more to Lucian before he obeyed. He padded back toward the small office, humming softly to himself. The crayon box clattered as he sat down, the sound painfully normal against the storm brewing in the shop. The moment Ethan was gone, Lucian stepped forward. Arya flinched instinctively, but refused to back away. She raised her chin, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice trembling only slightly. Lucian's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I could ask you the same, little wolf. I've been searching for you for 6 years, and now I find you here, with him." Arya's stomach twisted. "You're mistaken, am I?" Lucian's gaze sharpened, molten and furious all at once. "Don't insult me, Arya. You think I wouldn't recognize my own blood? The boy has my eyes, my scent. My wolf is clawing inside me, howling his truth." Her throat closed. She had spent years preparing for this moment, rehearsing lies, building walls. But under his stare, intense, predatory, unyielding, her defenses crumbled like sand. Still she tried. "He's mine. That's all you need to know." Lucian leaned closer, his presence overwhelming, his voice dropping into a dangerous whisper that brushed against her skin like a caress. "No, Arya. He's ours." Her heart lurched. The word ours pierced her deeper than she expected. She pushed against his chest, glaring up at him, though her hands trembled. "You don't get to walk into my life and claim him. You don't get to decide anything for us." Lucian's jaw clenched. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe pain. But it was buried quickly under steel. "I decide everything when it comes to my heir. And make no mistake, Arya, he is mine." Arya's chest rose and fell rapidly, her wolf stirring restlessly inside her at his words. Her instincts screamed to protect Ethan. But another part of her, the part she'd spent years burying, ached at the sight of Lucian standing there, fierce and unyielding, as if the universe had finally forced her to face what she had tried to escape. Their gazes clashed, fire and ice, anger and longing tangled in the space between them. The shop door chimed suddenly as another customer entered, breaking the moment. A middle-aged woman stepped inside, smiling politely. "Oh, I hope I'm not interrupting." Arya tore her eyes from Lucian, swallowing hard. "Of course not." "Please, help yourself." But as the woman wandered toward the roses, Lucian leaned down, close enough that his breath grazed her ear, sending an involuntary shiver through her. "This isn't over," he murmured. "Not by a long shot. You can lie to yourself, Arya, but you can't lie to me. I will have answers, and I will have my son." When he finally straightened and left the shop, the bell chiming faintly in his wake, Arya sank against the counter, her knees weak, her chest aching. For 6 years, she had lived hidden, safe, and untouchable, but now the Alpha King knew, and nothing would ever be the same again. Arya tried to steady her hands as she locked the shop that evening. The streets were quiet, golden with the last light of the setting sun, but her chest felt heavy, her nerves frayed. She knew he was still out there, watching, waiting. Ethan skipped ahead, humming, his little backpack bouncing on his shoulders. "Mama, can we have pancakes for dinner?" he chirped, completely unaware of the shadow that stalked them. Arya forced a smile. "Maybe, but only if you promise to do your reading first." He wrinkled his nose. "But pancakes are more important than reading." She laughed softly, the sound easing her tension for the briefest moment. But then she felt it, that electric pull in the air, the prickling awareness across her skin. He was here. Arya. His voice rolled out of the shadows like thunder. She spun, clutching Ethan's hand instinctively. Lucian stepped forward from the alley, the fading sunlight catching on the hard planes of his face. His coat swayed with his stride, his aura so strong it seemed to push the air aside. Ethan blinked up at him curiously. "It's you again." Arya squeezed his hand. "Inside, Ethan. Go wash your hands for dinner." Her voice was gentle, but there was no room for argument in her tone. The boy hesitated, glancing between them, then obeyed, running into their small apartment above the shop. The door clicked shut behind him. Lucian waited until Ethan was gone before he moved closer, his golden eyes burning into hers. "Why, Arya?" His voice was low, strained, like a man barely holding back a storm. "Why would you keep him from me?" Arya crossed her arms, though her body trembled. "Because you don't get to claim him like he's a prize. He's not just your heir, he's a child, my child, and I will do whatever it takes to protect him from your world." "My world?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "He is my world, he is my blood. Do you think I would let my son live like this, hidden, unguarded, vulnerable? Do you have any idea the enemies I've made, the threats that circle me daily? If they knew about him—" Her voice cracked like a whip. "That's exactly why I left. Because with you he would be nothing but a target, a pawn in your war. I couldn't let that be his life." For the first time Lucian faltered. His chest rose and fell sharply, his fists clenched at his sides. When he spoke again, it wasn't with anger. It was with something raw, almost broken. "You thought you were protecting him, but you were tearing me apart." The words hit her harder than she expected. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Lucian stepped closer, closing the space between them. His scent, wild cedar and smoke, wrapped around her, pulling at the part of her that still remembered the fire of his touch, the way his lips had once tasted under the moon. "You should have trusted me," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "You should have let me love him. Let me love you." Arya's breath caught. Her wolf surged inside her, aching for him, for the bond she had denied for so long. But she shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "It's too late," she whispered. Lucian's eyes softened, though his body remained tense, his dominance unyielding. He lifted a hand, hesitating, then brushed a stray strand of hair from her face with a gentleness that broke her. "No," he said firmly, as though it were law. "It's not too late. Not for us. Not for him." Arya's resolve cracked under the weight of his gaze. Her lips parted, her pulse wild, her body betraying her. But before either of them could move closer, a distant howl split the night. Lucian's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes flashing dangerously. His wolf stirred. Rogues. Arya's stomach dropped. Her greatest fear was here. They had been found. Lucian turned back to her, his expression fierce, his voice absolute. "Get Ethan. You're coming with me, now." The howl tore through the quiet street, low and guttural, followed by another, closer, hungrier. Arya froze, her breath catching in her throat. Memories she had buried for 6 years clawed back, of blood on moonlit soil, of screams swallowed by the night. Her wolf stirred uneasily inside her, ears pricked, instincts screaming danger. Lucian's expression hardened, his body shifting subtly, his alpha aura flooding the street with raw dominance. "They've tracked you," he said, voice clipped, eyes blazing gold. "They know about him." Arya's stomach twisted. No. She glanced instinctively toward the apartment above the shop. Ethan. Inside. Now. But even as he gave the order, shadows moved at the end of the street. Dark figures slinking between buildings, their glowing red eyes fixed on prey. Rogues. Lucian's growl rumbled through the air, primal and terrifying. He stepped in front of her, his broad shoulders blocking her from the threat. His wolf pushed close to the surface, teeth bared. "You shouldn't have come here," he snarled under his breath, though Arya wasn't sure if he meant her or the rogues. The first rogue lunged from the shadows, its claws scraping the cobblestone. Lucian moved faster than sight. One strike, a sickening crack, and the beast crumpled. Another charged, snarling, and Lucian met it with a roar that shook the ground, his power exploding outward. Arya's wolf surged inside her chest, screaming to protect her pup. She bolted into the apartment, grabbing Ethan, who looked up from his crayons, startled. "Mama? What's happening?" Her hands shook as she cupped his face. "Stay behind me, baby. Don't let go of my hand." The door downstairs crashed open, wood splintering, glass shattering. A rogue had broken through. Arya shoved Ethan behind her, baring her teeth, her wolf clawing to the surface. She wasn't a fighter like Lucian, but for her son, she would be feral. The rogue snarled, crouching low. Arya growled back, her claws sliding out, ready to strike. But Lucian was there first. He slammed the creature against the wall with a force that rattled the entire room. His eyes glowed like molten fire, his canines sharp, his voice a deadly growl. "You dare touch what's mine." One brutal twist, and the rogue fell limp. The silence afterward was deafening, broken only by Ethan's soft gasp. His wide golden eyes stared at Lucian, awe and fear mingling in them. "Mama, is he—" Arya pulled Ethan close, shielding him. Her chest heaved, her body trembling from the adrenaline. But she knew what Lucian was about to say before he even opened his mouth. Lucian turned to her, his chest rising and falling like a storm contained in human skin. His voice was steel. "This ends tonight. No more hiding, no more lies. You and the boy are coming with me." Arya shook her head, clutching Ethan tighter. "You can't just—" "I can." His eyes burned, not with cruelty, but with something far more dangerous. Conviction. "I won't let you risk him again. I won't let anyone take what's mine. He is my heir, Arya. And you—" His gaze softened for a fleeting second, aching and raw. "You are mine too, whether you admit it or not." The walls she'd built for 6 years cracked under the weight of his words. She hated how her heart ached, how her wolf yearned toward him despite everything. But before she could speak, Lucian swept Ethan into his arms with surprising gentleness. The boy blinked up at him, unafraid now, as though something deep inside recognized the bond. Arya's voice broke. "Lucian!" His jaw tightened. "You don't have a choice anymore." And with that, the Alpha King carried his son out into the night, forcing Arya to follow. The journey to the palace was a blur. Arya sat rigid in the leather seat of Lucian's black SUV, Ethan curled up against her side, sleeping soundly despite the chaos of the night. Outside, the forest rushed past, dark and endless, while inside, the silence was suffocating. Lucian drove without a word, his jaw tight, his golden eyes fixed on the road. The tension pouring off him was like a storm barely contained, and yet, when Arya looked at Ethan resting peacefully in his arms earlier, she had seen something in him she never thought possible. Gentleness. Now, in the stillness of the car, her thoughts twisted like thorns. She had fought for 6 years to keep her son out of this life, out of his life. And in one night, it had all unraveled. The palace rose out of the forest like something carved from shadow and stone. Massive towers stretched into the night, lit by flickering torches that cast an eerie glow against the high walls. Wolves patrolled the grounds, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Ethan stirred awake as the gates creaked open. He pressed his face against the window, his little voice hushed with awe. "Mama, it's a castle!" Arya's heart clenched. To him it looked magical, to her it was a cage. Lucian opened her door first, his hand extended. She ignored it, stepping out on her own, clutching Ethan's small hand in hers. His warm, curious eyes flicked between them. sensing the tension though he didn't understand it. Inside, the palace was grand but cold. High ceilings, marble floors, walls lined with portraits of past alphas, their eyes following her every step. Servants and guards bowed as Lucien passed, whispering under their breath. Arya hated the way they looked at her, like she was an intruder, like she didn't belong. Lucien led them through the halls until they reached a wing overlooking the gardens. The room he opened was spacious, with tall windows and a soft bed draped in furs. "You'll stay here," he said simply. His voice was firm but not unkind. "Both of you. It's the safest wing in the palace." Arya bristled. "You mean it's the easiest place to keep us locked away?" His eyes darkened. "Call it what you want, but you and our son will not leave these walls until I know the rogues who came for you are dealt with." Her chest tightened at the word "our," but she pushed it down, glaring. "You can't just decide that." Lucien stepped closer, his towering presence wrapping around her, his voice dropping low. "I can, Arya, and I will. You've hidden him from me once. I won't let you do it again." Ethan tugged at her hand, his small voice breaking the tension. "Mama, I like it here. Can we stay, just for a little while?" Arya looked down at him, torn. His eyes shone with wonder, so much like Lucien's that her breath caught. She wanted to tell him no, that this place was dangerous, that their freedom mattered more. But how could she crush that innocent light in his face? Lucien watched silently, something unreadable flickering in his gaze as he saw the boy's excitement. When Arya finally looked back at him, his expression had softened, just slightly. "You don't have to trust me," he said, his voice quieter now, almost raw. "But at least trust that I'll protect him, that I'll protect you." The words pulled at her, at the bond she had tried so desperately to deny. For a moment she almost let herself believe him. Almost. But then she turned away, pulling Ethan toward the bed. "Good night, Lucien." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He lingered a moment longer, watching them, before he stepped out, closing the heavy door behind him. Arya sank onto the bed, holding Ethan close as he drifted back to sleep. She stroked his hair, her thoughts tangled in fear and longing. She had thought she could keep her secret forever. But now, under the Alpha King's roof, with his golden eyes watching her every move, she wondered how much longer she could keep her heart a secret too. Morning light spilled across the palace windows, painting the stone walls in gold. Arya stirred awake slowly, the unfamiliar weight of the silk sheets reminding her she wasn't home, not that she'd had one in years. Beside her, Ethan was already up, kneeling on the window seat and pressing his nose against the glass. His voice rang out, full of wonder. "Mama, there are wolves in the garden!" Arya groaned softly, pushing herself up, her hair tumbling loose around her shoulders. She crossed the room and peered outside. Below, warriors trained in the courtyard, their movements sharp and disciplined, wolves shifting back and forth with seamless power. But it wasn't the warriors that held Ethan's attention. It was the tall figure standing among them, arms crossed, golden eyes gleaming in the morning sun. Lucien. Even from here, Arya could feel him. The bond tugged at her like an invisible thread, pulling, never letting her truly breathe. "Mama, he's strong, isn't he?" Ethan whispered, his eyes wide. Arya's chest tightened. "Yes," she admitted softly. "He's strong." Before she could drag him away, the training ended. As if sensing her gaze, Lucien's head tilted upward, their eyes locked across the distance, and her breath caught. His mouth curved, just slightly, in something that wasn't quite a smile, but wasn't cold either. Ethan waved eagerly. Lucien lifted his hand in return. Arya's wolf stirred inside her, restless. Later that day, she found Ethan missing from their chambers. Panic flared through her until she heard laughter echoing from the gardens. She followed the sound and froze. Lucien sat on the grass, his dark coat discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up. Ethan climbed over him like a little pup, laughing as he tried to tackle the Alpha King, who allowed it with surprising patience. "Almost got me," Lucien said with a mock growl, letting Ethan push him back until the boy landed triumphantly on his chest. "You're really strong," Ethan declared, "but Mama says I'm strong too. Want to see?" Lucien's eyes softened as he sat up, ruffling Ethan's hair. "I already see it, pup, you're mine." The words pierced Arya's heart. She wanted to run, to pull Ethan away, but her feet refused to move. Because what she saw wasn't the ruthless Alpha King the world feared. It was a father. and for the first time, she glimpsed what she had stolen from both of them. Lucian's gaze lifted, finding hers across the garden. Heat surged in her veins, a magnetic force dragging her closer, even when every rational thought screamed to stop. "Come!" Lucian called softly, his voice carrying across the space like velvet and steel. "Join us." Arya shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. It's not how it works." But Ethan tugged her hand, his innocent voice pleading. "Please, Mama? Just for a little while?" Her resistance crumbled. She stepped forward, every movement weighted with fear and longing. She sank onto the grass beside Ethan, who beamed as if he had just fixed the whole world. Lucian leaned closer, his scent enveloping her, cedar, smoke, power, and something deeply, dangerously familiar. His voice dropped low, just for her. "You don't have to keep fighting me, Arya." His eyes burned into hers, unyielding. "You feel it too, the bond, the way it never broke." Arya's lips parted, her heart pounding. She could deny him with words, but her body betrayed her. Her pulse quickened, her wolf pressed forward, desperate to be near him. "I can't," she whispered. "If I give in, I'll lose myself." Lucian's hand brushed hers, just barely, the touch sending sparks racing up her arm. "No," he murmured. "You'll find yourself. With me. With us." The air thickened between them, charged with longing. Ethan, oblivious, continued stacking stones in the grass, humming happily, while his parents sat inches apart, their hearts tangled in silence. And for the first time in 6 years, Arya let herself wonder, what if she hadn't run? Night in the palace carried its own kind of silence. Not the peaceful stillness of the forest, but a heavy, waiting quiet, as though the very walls held their breath. Arya sat by the window, the moonlight tracing her profile in silver. Ethan had fallen asleep hours ago, curled beneath furs on the bed, his small breaths steady and safe. She should have felt comforted by that, but instead, her heart raced, because she wasn't alone. Lucian stood in the doorway, one shoulder leaning casually against the frame, though there was nothing casual in the way his golden eyes fixed on her. Watching. Waiting. "You couldn't sleep either," he murmured, his voice low, threaded with warmth and command. Arya stiffened, forcing her gaze back to the gardens outside. "I didn't say that." He stepped into the room, the air shifting with his presence. "You didn't have to." The closeness of him made her wolf stir restlessly. She hated how easily he could unravel her composure, how the mate bond thrummed every time he neared. Lucian came to stand beside her at the window. Their arms didn't touch, but the heat of his body reached her, seeped into her skin. The moonlight lit the strong planes of his face, softened by the way he looked at her, like she was both a mystery and a memory he ached to claim. "You still don't believe I would have protected you," he said quietly. Arya's throat tightened. "I couldn't take that risk, not when I carried him." She glanced toward Ethan's sleeping form, her voice breaking into a whisper. "He was all I had." Lucian's chest rose and fell, his eyes softening with a flicker of pain. "And I wasn't enough." The vulnerability in his tone pierced her defenses. She turned to face him, and instantly regretted it. They were too close. His breath mingled with hers, his gaze dropping to her lips before locking on her eyes again. Her heart hammered. Her wolf howled inside her, urging her to close the distance, to remember what it felt like to belong to him. Lucian lifted his hand, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, tucking it behind her ear. The touch was feather-light, but it sent shivers racing down her spine. "You're still mine, Arya," he whispered, his voice husky, laced with an ache she felt in her bones. "You've always been mine, no matter how far you ran." Her breath hitched, her body leaned toward him before her mind could stop it. The pull of him was magnetic, inevitable. But then Ethan stirred in his sleep, mumbling softly. Arya tore her gaze away, stepping back like the touch had burned her. "I can't," she breathed, clutching her arms around herself. "If I let this happen again, it'll destroy me." Lucian's jaw clenched, but his voice softened, rough with restraint. "Or it will heal you." The tension between them crackled like fire, unspoken words thick in the air. For a long moment, neither moved, both trapped in the storm of what-ifs and what-shouldn'ts. Finally, Lucian exhaled sharply and stepped back. He looked at her one last time, a storm of longing in his eyes, before turning toward the door. But just before he left, his voice rumbled low, a promise that made her pulse race. "You can fight me, Arya, but you can't fight the bond. And one day soon, you won't want to." The door clicked softly behind him, leaving Arya trembling in the moonlight, her lips aching from the kiss they hadn't shared. And deep inside, her wolf whispered the truth she didn't want to face. She still loved him. The palace buzzed with whispers. Everywhere Arya went, eyes followed her. The mate who had run, the mother who had hidden the alpha's heir, the outsider now returned. It wasn't just curiosity, it was judgment, especially from the women. The daughters of noble houses, unmated she-wolves, all of them had once dreamed of standing where she now stood, and they didn't hide their disdain. It came in sharp looks during meals, in muttered words as she passed, in deliberate, petty slights, like the tray of bread that accidentally spilled in her path. Arya had learned to ignore it, she'd had to. But today was different, because Ethan was with her. She was in the corridor, her son skipping beside her, when one of the she-wolves stepped directly into their path. Tall, elegant, her gown shimmering like frost, her lips curved into a cruel smile. "So this is the boy," the woman said smoothly, her eyes sweeping over Ethan with mockery, "the bastard the Alpha King claimed." Arya froze, fury flooding her veins. Before she could react, Ethan pressed closer to her side, his small hand clutching her skirt. "Mama?" Arya opened her mouth, but a growl split the air. "Lucien." He appeared like a storm, golden eyes blazing, every line of his body taut with rage. In 2 strides he was in front of them, towering over the woman. "Say that again," he growled, his voice so low it rumbled through the hall. The woman paled, stumbling back. I only meant, you meant disrespect." Lucien's tone cut like a blade. "Not to Arya, not to my son. That's a mistake you'll only make once." The woman dropped her gaze, trembling, before fleeing down the corridor. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Arya's heart pounded as she clutched Ethan close. Her son looked up at Lucien with wide eyes, not of fear, but of wonder. "You scared her away, Papa," Ethan whispered, his voice laced with awe. Lucien's expression softened, his gaze flicking to Arya. "No one will ever speak that way about you again," he said, his words meant for her this time. Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to—" "Yes," he cut in, stepping closer. "I did. Because you're mine. Both of you." The possessive edge in his voice sent a shiver racing down her spine. She wanted to argue, to push him away, but the bond pulsed, weakening her resolve. That night, she found herself restless again, wandering the gardens under the moonlight. She should have gone back to bed, she should have kept her distance. But instead, she lingered by the roses, letting the cool night air calm her racing thoughts. "You always did love the night." Her breath caught as his voice drifted from the shadows. Lucien stepped into the moonlight, his dark coat unbuttoned, his hair slightly mussed. He looked less like the untouchable Alpha King, and more like the man she remembered, the one who had once stolen her heart with a single smile. "I didn't come here for you," she said quickly, though her pulse betrayed her. His lips curved. "No. But you knew I'd find you." They stood there, the silence heavy with everything unsaid. Slowly, Lucien reached for her hand. She stiffened, but didn't pull away. His thumb brushed her knuckles, warm and deliberate. "Arya," he murmured, his voice rough, aching. 6 years without you nearly destroyed me. Don't ask me to keep my distance now that you're here." Her chest rose and fell, her heart a wild drum. "You don't understand. If I let myself want this again, if I let myself want you—" His other hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up to his. The contact burned, her wolf surging at his touch. "Then stop fighting it," he whispered. And before she could argue, his lips claimed hers. The kiss was slow, not the demand of a ruthless alpha, but the plea of a man starved of her touch. His mouth moved against hers with aching tenderness, with passion barely restrained. Arya melted against him before her mind could catch up, her hands fisting in his shirt. Sparks raced through her body, the bond blazing to life between them. She gasped softly against his lips, and he deepened the kiss, pulling her closer until the world itself seemed to vanish. When he finally broke away, his forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling in the cool night. "You're mine," he murmured again, softer this time. "Almost broken. You always have been." Arya's lips trembled, her heart torn between fear and longing. She should push him away, she should run. But for the first time in years, she didn't move. The kiss haunted her. Arya woke with the taste of him still on her lips, the warmth of his touch seared into her skin. She told herself it had been a mistake, a slip in her resolve. But her wolf knew better. Her wolf purred with satisfaction, finally fed after years of starving. She avoided him the next day. She stayed in her chambers with Ethan, played games with him, braided his hair, and told herself she didn't need Lucian's presence. But fate had other plans. At dusk, a knock echoed at the door. Before she could stop him, Ethan bolted to open it. His delighted squeal followed. "Papa!" Arya froze. Lucian stepped inside, carrying a tray. On it sat 3 bowls of steaming stew and a basket of fresh bread. Not a servant, not a guard, him. "I thought we'd eat together tonight," he said simply, his golden eyes landing on hers. "The 3 of us." Ethan clapped happily. "Yes, Mama, please." Arya hesitated, torn between defiance and the longing she couldn't deny. Finally she nodded, if only for Ethan's sake. They ate together at the small table by the window. For once, the conversation wasn't heavy. Lucian listened intently as Ethan rambled about the garden, about the wolves he'd seen training, about how he wanted to be big and strong like Papa. Lucian's lips curved in something rare, a real smile. He reached over and lifted Ethan onto his knee, feeding him a bite of bread. Arya watched, her chest tightening at the sight. She had pictured this moment 1,000 times in secret dreams she'd never allowed herself to voice. Her son, in his father's arms, a family. When the meal ended and Ethan grew drowsy, Lucian carried him to bed. He tucked the boy in carefully, brushing a kiss across his forehead. Then he turned, and his gaze locked on Arya. The air shifted instantly. Her heart raced as he crossed the room. She should have stopped him. She should have told him to leave, but her body betrayed her, every nerve alight with anticipation. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Bringing food yourself, playing with him, pretending this is something we can have." Lucian's hand lifted, fingers grazing her cheek, his touch both tender and possessive. "Because it's not pretending, Arya. It's real. It's what we should have had all along." Her breath shuddered. "I can't trust that. I can't trust you." His thumb stroked her skin slowly, his eyes burning into hers. "Then let me prove it, not with words, with time, with actions." She trembled under his touch. "And if I fall again, if I lose myself to you?" His lips brushed hers, not quite a kiss, but enough to set her aflame. His voice was a low growl. "Then I'll catch you. Every time." The tension snapped. She surged forward, her mouth claiming his, desperate and hungry. This kiss wasn't tender. It was fire, 6 years of longing and denial erupting all at once. Lucian growled softly against her lips, pulling her flush against him. His hands framed her face, then slid down to her waist, gripping as if he'd never let her go again. Arya moaned into his mouth before she caught herself, breaking away, breathless and shaken. "I can't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not yet." Lucian's chest heaved, his golden eyes blazing with restraint. Slowly, painfully, he stepped back, though his gaze never left her. "Then I'll wait," he said, his voice rough. "But make no mistake, Arya, you're mine. And when the time comes, I won't hold back." He left her trembling in the moonlit chamber, her lips swollen from his kiss, her heart racing with a truth she could no longer deny. She still wanted him. She always had. The palace was restless. Rogues had been sighted on the borders again, their attacks growing bolder. Every warrior was on edge, and Arya could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Lucian was gone most of the day, leading patrols, commanding strategies, guarding not just the kingdom but, Arya knew, the boy and woman in his care. It should have made her feel safe. Instead, it made her restless. Because each time he left, fear gnawed at her. What if he didn't come back? That night, the storm broke, both outside and within. Thunder rolled over the palace, rain lashing against the windows. Arya stood at the balcony, her heart pounding as shadows moved in the courtyard below. A clash of snarls and steel echoed upward. The rogues had come for real this time. The door burst open. Lucian entered, his coat soaked, his shirt torn at the shoulder. His golden eyes locked on her instantly. "They breached the gates," he said, his voice sharp. "Stay inside. Guard Ethan." She stepped forward, panic choking her. "Lucian, you're hurt." He caught her face in his hands, kissing her forehead with a fierce tenderness that stole her breath. "I'll bleed 1,000 times before I let anything touch you or him. Do you understand me?" Her lips trembled. "Don't you dare leave me again." Something broke in his gaze. He kissed her, hard, desperate, like it might be the last time, and then he was gone, vanishing into the storm. Hours passed in a blur of fear. Arya sat by Ethan's bed, holding him close as thunder shook the walls. The sounds of battle raged outside, howls, steel, roars of defiance. And then silence. The door opened again. Lucian stood there, bloodied, battered, but alive, victorious. Arya's vision blurred with tears. She ran to him, clutching his face, her hands trembling. "I thought, you'll never lose me," he rasped, pulling her against him, his arms wrapped around her as if he'd never let go. And this time she didn't fight it. Later, when the palace settled, Lucian carried her to their chambers. Ethan slept soundly in the adjoining room, safe, blissfully unaware of the danger that had passed. But Arya was wide awake, her heart pounding with everything she had held back for 6 long years. Lucian set her down gently, his hands lingering at her waist, his golden eyes searched hers, raw with emotion. "Arya, I can't keep holding back. Not when I almost lost you." Her throat ached, tears spilled down her cheeks. "I was so afraid. Afraid if I gave in, I'd lose myself." His thumb brushed her tears away, his voice breaking. "No, my love, you'll find yourself. With me. With us." She kissed him then, not tentative, not restrained. Fierce. Hungry. Her lips crashed against his, her fingers tangling in his hair as if she could pour 6 years of longing into a single moment. Lucian growled softly, lifting her into his arms. The kiss deepened, passion igniting into fire. She melted against him, her wolf singing, the bond blazing with completion. For the first time in years she didn't run. She surrendered. Weeks later, the palace was different. The whispers had faded. The kingdom had seen their alpha fight for his mate and his son, and respect replaced judgment. Ethan played in the gardens, chasing butterflies with laughter echoing through the air. Arya sat on the bench, her hand resting on her still flat belly, her heart full. Lucian joined her, his arms sliding around her shoulders, pressing a kiss into her hair. His voice was soft, reverent. "Our family is whole now, and soon it will grow." Arya leaned into him, peace and love finally drowning out the fear she had carried for so long. For years she had thought she could hide her baby, hide from her mate, hide from destiny itself. But in the end she found what she'd been running from all along. Not chains, not control, but love. The Alpha King's love. And this time, she would never let it go. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Kindly comment below if you loved it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.